Facebook and thought I was on YouTube. But look, I'm gonna pull up. I'm trying to figure out how to make this thing stay in one place. It just isn't gonna do it. Nope. Y'all just have to look at the ceiling because I can't just sit there and do that. All right, look what I did. I did this silly shit. Live video. All right, now we need to tap to add description. A president in the past has already done what Donald Trump is currently doing. And I believe everyone needs to understand what happened the first time. All right, here we go. Now, I'm live on Facebook. I was like, because you don't know, I thought my iPhone, I can't get on YouTube on this one. I might be able to, but I think it makes me look extremely big and I can't see myself. Exactly, I did it that way. Let's see how much. Okay, I'm doing good on the amount of battery I have. Now I need to find something that I can lean on. That'll work. Oh man, y'all. Yeah, just look at the ceiling again. Sorry. Yes, look at the ceiling. All right, until I can get this fixed. There, that's better. Just for a second while I'm doing this other. So I can talk to y'all for just a second. Okay. I hurt. I hurt all over. Let's see. I'll move this one up closer. President Trump. President Trump. He is. He's a chump. What he's doing is so horrible. I think people don't. President Trump gave so what did they do? Getting benefits from the first his first term because now the deadline has been given an extension and they get 50% live on 2.5% of what they make, right? While the rest live on. There's a middle class. you're getting to be right in the class was we, which is owned by the banks, by the way, including fast enough. So they created paper, right? So the Federal Reserve made paper that the money was printed on. The federal government from the oligarchs. Do y'all understand that the Federal Reserve by the federal government? We are taxpayers' reserve. Yeah, we might taxes. So I can't see that we're paying taxes on the Federal Reserve. I know, they can make it in Bitcoin because somebody spent time and energy mining some figment of their money system. Are they think electricity's not gonna go out? If their computers access your Bitcoin. What if the electricity in the whole city goes out and now you're going to travel to another like after day after day after day? Do you guys see them shut off the electricity in New York? Don't y'all remember that? And then they said that it was some kind of a what has to wait for it to begin again. Or they have to start it back up here, right? And then begin, it'll start going down. And it ain't the fastest thing ever for all the city to get electricity before all the next town gets electricity. It takes days, weeks to get your electricity back on, believe me. And you're going to be sitting there in the dark, no lights except for your, whatever you've got charged and your, what you call it, generators. Okay. So you got your generators for a little light for yourself But having the light on when everything else is dark don't make it any better. Don't make it any better, because that's when the vandals come out. That's when the people that you don't know exist come out. And those people are not nice at all. You don't understand what's going to happen if the lights go out, if the electricity goes out. Because I was in California, y'all, and I saw the government putting in their own electrical grid away. SA as government that's been doing stuff to show okay whatever they're doing. They've been criminals since the beginning. George Washington owned slaves. They didn't make no constitution for the black people or the Chinese people, Korean people, or the Mexicans. Nope. It's the Constitution was for white men. White men. Why? What is this all actually about? And how come the Jewish people and the Christians think that they can use for all the evil they have done? You say, well, yeah, the people. Why? There's two reasons why. One, you're afraid of something called hell. They scared you believing that you are a sinner and you must repent. You must repent and give up everything to become a Christian. And just believe that you're saved through grace and you don't have to do anything to earn that grace. And yet they turn right around and murder little babies in Palestine. Christians standing up for what's going on in Palestine, and it's disgusting. You choose me to be the president and treasurer of all nonprofits. I'm going to stop that right now, because we will be in control of the trillions and trillions of dollars as we take back our consent to be governed by. Know for a fact I am not the only one. Those systems and butter bars and them different kind of little I can't remember dots on a bar, little black squares on a silver bar, and then they had one through NCO is a sergeant, non-commissioned. They give them the higher status of officer. Anyway, I know a lot of people and I'm waiting for them, and they are going to be here to help us all make this happen. But you have to make me go viral. I can't just be, to whatever few little people are listening to me. You have to share this right now. Share what I'm talking about with other people and follow me. Yeah, we're on. She forgot to put the peanut butter in the bag. I gotta get it back. I'll be right back to go to you. I'll be right back to you. Okay, because you got your bike now. Oh, yeah. You think you're gonna make it? Well, pet Annie first. Give Annie. She's just Annie's all right. I know you've only got 10 minutes. When they close 10 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, I think. No. 7 o'clock closes. Dollar General. Oh, Dollar General's 10, yeah. All right. All right. How did she forget to put it in the bag? I don't know. Because she gave one of them big bags around a little bag. Yeah. You don't have to go back tonight. Yeah, that's true. All right. You said I gotta go right now. Right now. Might not remember. And that's what it is, y'all. If you don't do something right now, you tend to forget about it, right? You have to do something. How to just start. And the only way to do that, right. And then if you're and that's exactly what needs to be done. We need to make a list and then number them in importance. Number them 1 through 6. Mary Kay called it getting the 6 most important things done every day. And she said that most people only, most successful people only got 2 things out of the 6 done every day. And you can get 2 more things done, maybe 3. And then by the next day, your energy level that you're making, and it makes a difference. It makes you think differently. It causes dopamine to come up, to produce in your brain, which makes you feel happier. So when you see something you've done, you get dopamine and you feel happier. Then you're able to get something else done. And then guess what? You get dopamine times 2 because every time you start seeing all the things is coming up, you're moving around, you're to be worked, you're it's it's hard to take that very first step. But the very first step is writing something down, recording it, putting it on your computer, your laptop, put it on your phone. That's where I keep most of my stuff is on my phone. I might have a different, setup later on. But anyway, now this whole thing that Donald uh now I'm gonna do it like this so you can see it. And I'm gonna try to turn these in. I'm talking whenever they're saying something, but I don't know. Oops. I'm gonna do this thing. I could put this, right there. I think that works. All right, this is it right here. Y'all ready? Can everybody see it? All right.
So bad, even I could do a better job. But first, it's Benjamin Harrison, who isn't exactly a household name. In fact, if you showed his face to 100 Americans, most would say, "Isn't that the guy from the Titanic?" But he actually made a huge mark, mainly by wrecking the economy and then vanishing before he could take the blame. Because in 1890, Harrison signed the McKinley Tariff, jacking up tariffs to nearly 50%.
Oops. What did I do? I lost it. Where'd it go? That's the rise and fall of ISIS. What happened to the one where I was just watching?
Since the turn of the millennium, few organizations have been as synonymous. From chasing down runaway slaves to stealing millions from wounded veterans.
Wait.
From chasing down runaway slaves to stealing millions from wounded veterans. To doing nothing while the country burned to the ground. These are the 10 worst presidents in American history. And they're so bad, even I could do a better job. But first, it's Benjamin Harrison, who isn't exactly a household name. In fact, if you showed his face to 100 Americans, most would say, "Isn't that the guy from the Titanic?" But he actually made a huge mark, mainly by wrecking the economy and then vanishing before he could take the blame. Because in 1890, Harrison signed the McKinley Tariff, jacking up tariffs to nearly 50%. The idea was to protect American businesses. But
you hear that? McKinley put 50% tariffs in place to jack up the economy? Is that what he said? Hold on.
he actually made a huge mark, mainly by wrecking the economy and then vanishing before he could take the blame. Because in 1890, Harrison signed the McKinley Tariff, jacking up tariffs to nearly 50%. The idea was to protect American businesses. But what actually happened was prices skyrocketed. Foreign trade collapsed, and farmers got absolutely smoked. And as if that wasn't enough, he burned through the entire federal surplus like a kid after his first paycheck.
Sound
But
familiar?
the worst part, none of this came crashing down until after he left office. When the Panic of 1893 devastated the economy and President Grover Cleveland was left dealing with the dumpster fire. No fair! But Harrison, he was long gone, chilling back in Indiana, writing books and pretending like nothing happened. So no, Benjamin Harrison didn't commit crimes or start wars. He just played Jenga with the economy and walked away as it collapsed. But none of that was as bad as Millard Fillmore, who
Okay, y'all hear that? That was our president and what he did to everybody. Now listen to what Fillmore did.
turned every citizen into a slave hunter. Because in 1850, the nation was divided over slavery. The South was loving it. The North, not so much. But the South was threatening to secede. So, in an effort to compromise and preserve the Union, Fillmore signed the Fugitive Slave Act, legally requiring every U.S. citizen to assist in the capture of runaway slaves.
Horrible.
In other words, if a slave showed up on your doorstep and you offered them a glass of water, it could land you in prison.
Wow.
Even if you lived in a free state. That's nuts. But as you may have guessed, this backfired. Because normal people who never cared about slavery were suddenly like, "Wait, what the f***'s going on?" With abolitionist movements growing overnight and more normies becoming radicalized by the day. So while Fillmore thought he was keeping the peace, he ended up pouring fuel on the fire, pushing the nation one step closer towards civil war. But that's not as embarrassing as this next president, William Henry Harrison, who holds the record for the shortest presidency in American history. Because in 1841, Harrison was 68 years old, one of the oldest presidents elected at the time. So, to prove he still had energy for the job, he delivered the longest ever recorded, nearly 2 hours long. Man's out here with no coat, no hat, and no common sense. The old man just wanted to prove he still had it. A lot like your grandpa trying to do a kickflip on your skateboard. But a few weeks later, he came down with a bad cold that turned into pneumonia. For most of history, we thought it came from his crazy speech in the rain. But modern historians believe it was more likely typhoid from contaminated drinking water at the White House. Either way, 31 days after taking office, William Henry Harrison was dead. He didn't sign a single law or make one decision. Instead, he spent more time writing an inauguration speech than being an actual president. And to make matters worse, he triggered a constitutional crisis. Because at the time, nobody knew what happens after a president dies in office. It wasn't 100% clear if the vice president simply acted as president or became president outright. Thankfully, John Tyler stepped up and said, "I'm president now." And everyone just kind of went along with it. But what was William Henry Harrison's legacy? No scandals, no war, no nothing. Just one.
Did y'all hear that? That president just said, no, yeah, I'm president, and everyone went along with it. I mean, what happened to the vice president, but what happened to um, a vote? That right there, that is completely against democracy. Whatever the hell. Who did that again? Let me see.
Thankfully, John Tyler stepped up and said, "I'm president now." And everyone just kind of went along with it.
That's crazy.
But what was William Henry Harrison's legacy? No scandals, no war, no nothing. Just one epic speech and a short stay at the White House. If there were a Hall of Fame for how to completely blow a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Harrison would be a first ballot member. But at least he didn't, completely destroy America, like Franklin Pierce, who, well, came pretty dang close. Because with his movie star good looks and smooth-talking speeches, Pierce became elected to deal with the whole slavery problem.
What?
But he quickly made one giant mistake. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. You see, back then there was a bunch of unorganized land after the Louisiana Purchase. State lines were still being drawn, and the Kansas-Nebraska Act established the areas as U.S. territories. But it also stated that popular sovereignty would determine if slavery was allowed in each territory. In other words, the new settlers would vote on it, reversing the long-standing Missouri Compromise, which banned it above a certain line. So, what was the result? Pro-slavery and anti-slavery forces flooded Kansas with rifles, torches, and angry mobs. The territory quickly descended into chaos and bloodshed. Houses were burned, families slaughtered, and the 5-year bloodbath was nicknamed Bleeding Kansas.
What?
So what did Franklin Pierce do to stop it? Pretty much nothing. In fact, he backed the pro-slavery side, which formed an illegitimate government through voter fraud and violence.
What?
He even sent in federal troops to stabilize the new government.
What?
Pretty crazy times.
What?
Because instead of calming tensions between the North and South, Pierce accelerated the nation's march towards civil war. But this next terrible president is one you might not expect. And that's Woodrow Wilson, who's known for his lofty ideals like championing the League of Nations and making the world safe for democracy. And hey, he did some pretty good stuff, like lead us through World War I. But here's the problem. Back at home, he levied some of the worst attacks on American freedoms in U.S. history. During World War I, he signed the Espionage Act and Sedition Act, making it a crime to criticize the government, the military, or even the flag.
Criticize?
I love America just as much as the next guy. I'm a friggin' bald eagle. But this was downright crazy.
Wait, he made it criminal to criticize? He can't do that. That's against the Constitution.
Because under his administration, over 2,000 Americans were prosecuted.
Wow.
Like journalists, union leaders, and everyday citizens who dared their minds. Free speech, the bedrock of American democracy, was crushed under the weight of wartime paranoia. But Wilson thought it was totally worth it. Because after World War I, he pushed for the League of Nations, the first worldwide intergovernmental organization designed to maintain world peace. But there was one little problem. It was rejected by the US Senate, out of fear that it would drag America into European wars. He couldn't believe it. But here's the funny part. The League of Nations still ended up happening with 63 other countries, just without the US. So Wilson was left crying outside the club. And to cap it all off, he punished Germany so severely after World War I with the Treaty of Versailles that Wilson became a prisoner of his own ego.
Did you guys hear that? He created World War II by what he did in World War One. What?
Countries with the US. So Wilson was left crying outside. To cap it all off, Germany so
Oh, I gotta find out what the Treaty of Versailles is all about. Because the president caused the World War II. Interesting, because then the next president, Hoover or whoever it was, they knew that Pearl Harbor was going to happen so they could get involved in World War II. So I think that was the plan all along. United States is involved in World War One. We have to go back and find out what really happened that created World War One. Why all this murder and bloodshed is going on. That is exactly what we need to stop right now.
in the end, Wilson became a prisoner of his own ego. A man so obsessed he refused to bend, causing chaos at home and abroad. And Wilson's presidency had some eerily similar parallels to this next guy, George W. Bush, who entered the White House with a handshake and a smirk, until history threw him every disaster short of a meteor strike. First, 9/11. And to his credit, Bush brought the whole country together for about 6 months. But what followed reshaped the entire world, pretty much for the worse. First came the decision bad intelligence that Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass.
That was all right.
He didn't. The US was locked into a $1 trillion war that cost over 4,400 American lives, wounded tens of thousands more, and destabilized the Middle East for decades.
He didn't get no intel about Saddam Hussein. They made all that shit up.
Thanks for your service. But like Woodrow Wilson, Bush gutted the civil liberties of Americans at home by passing the Patriot Act in October of 2001, which dramatically expanded surveillance powers of the federal government, allowing the NSA and FBI to surveil U.S. citizens without a warrant.
Just to let y'all know, too, that 9/11, there are documentaries that you can watch that have many questions that our government refuses to answer. And one of them is called 9/11, A Decade of Deception. There's many more, though.
Hey, is this thing recording me? So, although you can argue this was necessary at the time, many of these powers still exist today. I don't think these guys would be too happy about a surveillance state. Then came Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
Where the levees broke, New Orleans flooded,
right.
And the federal government's response was,
nothing.
We're working on it. Because as people were left stranded on rooftops, the government set up the Louisiana Superdome as the shelter of last resort. The roof was damaged, the power and toilets overflowed, which just stinks. The whole fiasco reeked of government inefficiency, and Bush was the poster child. So not only was Bush messing things up back then, but Americans are still living with the consequences today.
Right.
But speaking of messing stuff up, after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, America needed a steady hand to unite the country. Instead, it got Andrew Johnson, a former slaveholder from Tennessee who, believe it or not, didn't exactly believe in racial equality. He vetoed the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which would grant citizenship and basic rights to formerly enslaved people. Things like the right to make contracts, own property, and be treated equally under the law.
That's horrible.
What the heck, man? But Congress wasn't having it. They overrode his veto and pushed through the 14th Amendment, locking those rights into the Constitution. But Johnson didn't back down. He found other ways to prop up the South, like issuing mass pardons to tens of thousands of Confederates. Because it's kind of a big deal when you take up...
Hey, isn't that interesting? That's exactly what Trump did for the January 6th rioters, seditious conspirators, uprising with violence.
With restored their rights and let them retake power in the South. His logic? We shouldn't kick the losers while they're down. But as you might have guessed, his plan backfired, because this started the Jim Crow era, created fertile ground for the Ku Klux Klan, and stoked racial tensions nationwide.
Wow.
In Congress's eyes, Johnson had basically undone the point of winning the whole Civil War. So they impeached him. The first presidential impeachment in U.S. history, where Johnson faced trial in the Senate and survived conviction by just one vote.
What?
Gee, that was close. As you can tell, post-Civil War America was crazy. We needed a leader to rise above the hate and pull the country forward. Instead, Johnson doubled down on division. But if you thought that was bad, get ready for Herbert Hoover, who promised Americans a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage. And honestly, people believed him. Because on paper, Hoover had a glittering resume. Self-made millionaire, humanitarian, and a respected public servant. This guy...
That's interesting. Donald Trump's never been a humanitarian, but he's been the rest.
Was going to usher America into a new golden age. Until the Great Depression hit. Just months into his term, the stock market crashed and Hoover froze. As a staunch capitalist, he believed the government intervention would only make things worse. So he sat back and let private charities and local governments handle the crisis. The results? Banks collapsed. Businesses shuttered. And unemployment soared to 25%. I'm going broke out here, man.
Wow.
But the final blow came in 1932 with the Bonus Army protest, where 15,000 World War I veterans marched peacefully on Washington, D.C., demanding early payment of bonuses they were promised, money they desperately needed to survive. And Hoover's response? He sent in the U.S. Army. Led by General Douglas MacArthur, federal troops used tear gas, tanks, and bayonets to violently clear the encampment. And when photographs of assaulted veterans hit the front page of newspapers across America, it was game over. Hoover's legacy was sealed, not as a helper, but as a cold, clueless man who fumbled the Great Depression and turned tanks against our own veterans. No list of terrible presidents will be complete without the guy who watched the Civil War unfold from the front row and did nothing. An event so devastating, it almost killed the country forever. When James Buchanan took office in 1857, the nation was already tearing at the seams over slavery. He had a choice: take action and lead, or do nothing. Instead, he chose door number 3 and let the Supreme Court handle it, which led to the infamous Dred Scott decision, that said Black Americans could never be citizens. And Buchanan celebrated. The debate was over in his mind. He even pressured justices behind the scenes to make a sweeping pro-slavery ruling, thinking this would settle the issue once and for all. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Instead, it lit a fire under the North. And 3 years later, Abraham Lincoln, who opposed the expansion of slavery, won the presidency without a single Southern electoral vote. Nice work, Top Hat. The South panicked. With no more national power, Southern states began seceding from the Union before Lincoln took office. And Buchanan, who was still president, insisted that secession was illegal, but also claimed the federal government had no authority to stop it. Thanks for nothing, dude. By the time Buchanan left office, 7 states were gone. Federal forts had been seized, and America was free-falling into civil war. Buchanan's legacy isn't defined by scandal or one bad law. It's defined by his failure to act when the nation's very survival was at stake. Sheesh. I mean, it couldn't possibly get any worse than that.
Well, what could he have done to stop other states from seceding? What could he have done?
Right? Well, believe it or not, it does. Because this is the worst president in U.S. history. His name is Warren G. Harding. A man so unqualified for the job, he even admits it. Harding once privately said, "I am not fit for this office and should never have been here." And he wasn't wrong, because Harding ran on returning America to normalcy. Instead, he delivered the most corrupt administration of all time. Where a Secretary of the Interior secretly leased federal oil reserves to private companies in exchange for bribes. But not as head of the veteran who embezzled millions meant for wounded soldiers. Or his attorney general, who allegedly took kickbacks to look the other way while criminals ran wild during Prohibition. And while all of this was happening, Harding spent his days golfing, gambling, and drinking, which was illegal during the Prohibition, by the way.
Yeah.
He even had multiple affairs while in office. First, Harding even admitted, "I have no trouble with my enemies. I can take care of my enemies in a fight. But my damn friends, they're the ones that keep me walking the floor at night." And maybe the guilt started eating away at him, because Warren G. Harding died of a heart attack in 1923, mid-scandal, leaving the country shocked at the rot inside his administration. Harding's presidency didn't just damage trust in government, it shattered it. But hey, maybe that was a good thing, because today we're still skeptical of political corruption, even with it happening in front of our faces. How's that stock portfolio going up? At their jobs, they nearly broke the country. But if you thought their legacies were dark, wait until you hear how they died. One choked on cherries. Another dropped dead from a stroke. And yeah, one got a... This is how every president died in their last words. So click this video right here, because this one's over. And trust me, it only gets crazier.
Okay.
Would it be a bad idea if you use our...
Okay, y'all. That is... Okay. Hello, everybody. How much longer do we want to let this shit, crap, whatever you want to call it, happen? Aren't we tired of this? Yet. We are tired of this. I am tired of this. We, the people, have every right. We have every right to throw out this government and institute a new government. And I will lead the way, Sassy Grace, because your grace is going to be sassy. And it's Sassy's opinion because I'm sassy and it's my opinion. Y'all, I'm just giving everybody facts here. And the facts are that at least we know of 10. That's just a short, that's just a 10 worst. That's not including everybody else and Donald Trump and all the rest. Y'all, what George Bush did at Katrina was, thank you, was the most horrific thing ever. And then everybody blaming everybody else for what was going on and ultimately trying to blame Brown, worked for FEMA. That was not his fault. That's the president's fault. The president takes over. The president is the ultimate, supposed to be the ultimate person that is the most caring, that wants to see really good things happen for people. And if the president was that kind of a person, then those people would have been evacuated before that ever happened. Whether they blew the levees or not, they waited 5 days. And what? Wait, one of their excuses was that all the aircraft have been tied down away from where Katrina might land. But it don't take no 5 days. Those people should have been in those helicopters, in planes, using drones, and they would have been there. You can fly in the army. They lied. They left early inside of their attics to die. They left people in places to die. Left those people. Wouldn't let other people come in and help. Our federal government had have soldiers soldiers actually murdering people who are trying to survive, and not letting other people come in. Their job was just to sit there and prevent people from mean you get. And we are going to talk why, what happened. It's all about the money, isn't it? This is how we are going to come up against this government and take back our consent. We do not have to go to court to do this. This is not a court process. This is invoking the Declaration of Independence and taking back our consent. It is only through the consent of the government. Like you hire a governess to come in and take care of your children. Is the governess's job to enslave? Is it to make them work and pay taxes and all that crap? No, it's to teach them and to guide them and to love them. And our government isn't doing that. And we need a governess. And I'm asking you to let me be that governess. And it's also govern us, as in govern us, everybody, all of us together. Let me govern, and we'll see what's going on. We're gonna go find out what the Illuminati is. Yes, we are. We're going to go find out who everybody is. We are. Hell's Angels, we're even coming to find out who y'all are. Right? We want to know who every secret society is, what they stand for, what they're doing. And if you have a problem with that, well, I don't know what to tell you because we're coming anyway. We're questioning all of you to find out why are you doing this? Why are you acting this way? We want to know. We want you to see something different in life. You have never seen anything different. That's why you've gotten involved in a gang. I'm here to show you something different and a way out. I'm here to help the inner city, the black people. I'm here to help all of the onions. Do this. Me, the new president and treasurer of all nonprofits. It's a vote. Do y'all understand what a vote is? It's all, no one owns a nonprofit. Good. You get
Free tariffs, right?
where?
Everybody puts in your 10 o'clock. At 9:30.
Nice.
Yes.
Not great. They're giving out free phones and tablets.
Yeah.
Who's doing it?
They were there today. Oh God. I just don't name those people, but they be there. They're gonna be there all week. I mean, just
Okay.
Sunday. So,
But what about the service?
oh, Wi-Fi?
Yeah, whatever.
They come
Are
with
they
it.
giving you some kind of service with
Yes,
them?
yes, yes.
For
Unlimited.
free?
Yes, unlimited. Yes.
They did away with that government program.
Who Lord? I had a long day.
Annie, you guys see Annie when she's staring at the apple pie? And she ain't even taking her eyes. She ain't even taking her eyes off the apple pie at all. Annie?
Yeah, the lady at the store, you remember?
Oh, the lady. Oh, okay. So you got your peanut butter. All right, that's awesome. All right, thank you. He's really turned out to be a really good person. Man, we got in that argument that day. I'm like, what you going out there for? Mm. Yeah, Annie. She's like, give me that whole thing. No one owns, even if they started it, they don't own it. Writers, but other people have president, treasurer, secretary, and board of directors. And in the beginning, when they created it, they probably had, a group of people that came together and they all decided at that point what they were going to do, who was going to be doing what. And then they uh, start the business, and they have certain bylaws that they have to adhere to in order to be a nonprofit. So the only reason that I dropped a piece down there, the only way you can have a nonprofit is for humanitarian reasons. There might be one other way, but it's for humanitarian reasons. So the church is nonprofit. He's not for the upkeep of the church to be kept in the coffers in the bank account, just in case they decide they want to remodel something. That's not how a nonprofit works. If you have money in the bank and somebody's hungry, then you're breaking your bylaws, because a nonprofit means no money in the bank if somebody is suffering. When you heal the people, then the people are able to keep giving you money to go right back. If each person can give what they little bit they make, then it goes into a big sharing pot, and the people are helped not based upon how much they gave, but upon their need. That is the way that it's supposed to work. Now, when they're breaking their bylaws, say they don't like the president of the company, everybody can vote that everybody in the board of directors and stuff can vote that president out, but so can all the other people in the pretty much world, because you don't have to be a citizen of the United States to vote for me. I think you have to be on US soil, though, which means that people in other countries can go on to any of the bases and vote for me. And they don't have to be a US citizen. That means that their countries can go on a US basis and vote for me. Now, how are we going to make this vote happen? I'm getting it out there, y'all. I'm trying to tell everybody that I can about this plan, so that we can take care of all the people all over the earth right now. That this goes like wildfire. We can do this. I know we can. We have so many people committed to a cause that want to help other people and themselves from the corruption of this government. That's why we must take over the nonprofits. The trillions and trillions of dollars will help us start doing what needs to be done, instead of waiting for a corrupt government to do it for us after we paid them. They're only using the taxpayer money to be cruel to the taxpayer. That's why rich people aren't hardly paying any taxes. They're not cruel to them. They're cruel to us. They're cruel to all of us that are sitting here with a 2.5% divided, 2.5% of the total divided amongst the whole, Lord, the whole bottom. One third. We're only we're only getting one third of the money. The rest of the money, the middle class and the upper class, they're getting two-thirds of the money. But the problem is, artificial intelligence and all these robots and stuff are putting a lot of people out of jobs and careers. Now, those people are becoming the 50% that's only getting one third of the overall amount of money. 2.5% is all we're getting. 2.5% uh, divided amongst the people, but I gotta let Annie out. But some people, hold on. Huh? She's outside. Just let her out. Mm, mm. I need to find that where he said that 2.5%. We didn't watch that, did we? Yeah, they've done that. They've figured out how much excuse me, how the USA colonized USA. I wasn't it. Where was I? I was watching that. 10 different, the difference between Catholics and Protestants, how the U.S. stole the Middle East, and where's presidents. I don't remember where it was, but yeah, that was that guy. Where was that at? Was that on Facebook? Couldn't have been on Facebook. I wasn't on Facebook. Oh well, I'll doesn't matter. I'll just tell you what he said. That the, the half of all the people have to divide up 2.5% of the overall taxes of all the people. 2.5% is what we get. In the middle class, I can't remember what he said, what the percentage is, like 30% of the overall. And then, so that would be the rest, 30%, 70%, what? 68% goes to the top 10%. And the rest of us are sitting here watching them have fun with the riches while we're sitting here struggling just to pay rent. The income inequality in this country is lacking extremely. We're begging for more money so we don't have to work two jobs just to pay for whatever we need. It's not fair. And I don't care anybody who says life's not fair. I've been telling everybody since I can remember. Well, I am going to make life fair. And I haven't stopped. I've been saying that since I was a teenager. When anybody would tell me, well, I'd say that's not fair. And they would say, well, life's not fair. Well, I'm going to make it fair for everybody. Because if you can't have it, if life ain't fair for you, then life should not be fair for me either. That's the way that it works. If you're hungry and you have no way to get food, then I am supposed to be out there trying to find you and feed you, not listen to all these people that are negative towards making life fair for everyone. When life's fair for everyone, nobody has any reason to sit around and talk about anybody else. When you go out and you do what needs to be done to help the people that are hungry, that have nowhere to live, that can't pay their utilities, have no food in their homes, you have to go find those people. They're not going to be able to find you. How are they supposed to be able to find you? You have to actually go there, see it for your own eyes, and then maybe you'll do something about it. I went out there and I lived out there on the streets with people so I could understand what was going on. My ex husband kidnapped my son through the legal justice system. And my cousin, Jimmy Dyer, and his wife, Shelley, kidnapped my daughter, Joy, with the help of a corrupt government. They both paid off the government to kidnap my children. I guess that's what you call a bribe. I guess that's what you call uh, lobbying. Did he go lobby with them and give them money? Yeah, I'm sure that they both got paid because I was never charged with anything. Don't you have to charge somebody with something before you can do something like that? You just kidnap somebody's child because you said some bullshit and they believed it, even though you had absolutely no proof at all. No proof, no charges, nothing. They were kidnapped. And I'm going to talk about Lillian, my dad's ex wife's daughter, Lillian. She said that I told people that I needed or that I let my what'd she say exactly? That it was up to me to have given up my children so that I could understand. Come on, I'm sorry. That I gave up my children to understand what the Native Americans and the black people went through. And how can that be a true statement? That I gave up my kids? That's not what I said at all. Because how can I understand what they went through if I willingly gave up my children, which I did not? I fought hard for my children, but everybody was against me, including Lillian, when I needed their help and support to stop what was happening. All they did was believe whatever they wanted. I said what I went through. God told me, the Creator told me in my head, how would you know what the slaves and the Native Americans and everybody else that's ever had their children ripped out of their arms and devastated would feel? How would you know how they felt if your children were not ripped away from you through no fault of your own while you were only trying to help people? That's all I've ever done in my life is try to help other people. I've been judged, spit on, punched, kicked, broken ribs, broken hands, hair ripped out, and more, way more than that. But now I have the experience to do this. Now I have all the experience that I need in order to be able to lead the people of the free world. How would I know how to tell people how to be compassionate and help people? But does that mean that everybody's going to get away with the crap they've done? Nope, it ain't. It won't. It's not happening that way. People that have been harmful to other people are going to be cleaning cells with a toothbrush. Nah, maybe not. But what they will be doing is they will be in the front lines to go find and help the hungry people. That is what's going to be happening to them. They're going to be going down into the dungeons of the police stations and the county jails and the prisons. They're going to be in the front line going out there into Palestine and into Iran and Afghanistan and Pakistan. They're going to be on the front lines out there finding the people that need help and taking care of them, bringing them back to health, getting them out of those situations. That's what's going to happen to them. all these churches and everybody's sitting around claiming to be a Christian and doing nothing except criticizing other people who are trying to do good. Not all Christians are doing that, but and Muslims can believe whatever they want to believe, but everything written down isn't true. Nah, nope. They're basing every single thing on what they think is the truth. But in reality, they're murdering people. So what they believe isn't true. Nothing that has to do with murder, a hierarchy, poor people and rich people is absolutely not from the Creator at all. Not from the Creator. The Creator doesn't do that kind of stuff. The Creator has been talking to me and telling me what's getting ready to happen. Except that I stopped Chris Cripps from creating whatever that thing was they were going to create, the Antichrist. I think an Antichrist is somebody who's come to tell you that it was all BS and not true, that you're going to be tortured forever. And there really is no figment of your imagination coming out of the sky to save you. People can believe whatever they want to believe. I don't care what people believe. I only know what I believe. And I'm on my way to take care of everybody. I am not arguing with anybody about that. Remember, that was crazy. If you think they don't know about me, think again. Somebody hacked into my phone and it says US government. And I've got the phone number is now in my phone under recent calls. And it says US government on it. Now, somebody hacked into my phone, and when it was ringing, as soon as I pushed the thing, or I was getting ready to, or I did for accepting the call because I was trying to. Now, I think I didn't get it quite pushed when a banner appeared at the top on the screen of my phone. It's never happened before. Never had a banner on my phone just appear and say that a US government is going to what? Get rid of my phone number? Is that what they said? US government is going to delete my phone number or deactivate my phone number. And then when I pushed accept it, because I'm like, what? Then the phone starts ringing and some guy comes on and asks how he can help me. And I'm like, y'all called me. No, you were transferred here. I said, yeah, whoever transferred me to you called me. Yeah. He hung up on me. I've got it on, I got the part of it saved, because I've got it whenever I can record calls with my iPhone. So I recorded his call. It was pretty short. And then I called him back and told him my plan, told him what I'm doing. Everybody's going to hear about me real quick. Everybody. Because my idea is real, it's true, it's feasible, and it's legal. It's the government. I don't know where I'm saying. I'm so excited. The government cannot do anything about it. They can't stop it. There's no media blitz that they can have on me. There's nothing they can do. Nothing other than murder me. Or, I mean, technologically, they could cut off my, you know, streaming and all that shit going out, but they're not doing it. They're not doing it, and nobody is doing it. They're allowing me to be live. They're allowing everybody to be live, but especially they're allowing me to be live and to be able to continue to advertise to everybody what I'm doing and not be in fear. I'm not living in fear. I'm doing what I need to do. There's no way the creator brought me this far just to it not to happen. How can it be going live with all this information, with the foundation bedrock deep within the core of the earth? How can it not happen? It is going to happen. I know it's going to happen. Yes, Sherry, I want that freaking pie. She's all laughing. She wants that pie. That's right. Give me that pie. It was good too. I know. It's not good for this though. I'm sure I'm gonna start exercising, y'all. I gotta get back to my army physique. I can't handle this. I gotta start working out. I ain't putting anybody down that loves their rolls. I just am not one of them. I don't like my rolls. Yeah. Anyway, let's see if there's anything else here that I wanted to see. The Great Depression. 12 minutes. The Great Depression in 12 minutes. Absolutely.
The Great Depression was the worst economic downturn in modern history. People went from parties, jazz music, and riches in the roaring 20s to losing their life savings and standing in bread lines in the span.
Wow, y'all hear that? The Great Depression. When was the Great Depression? Everybody went from having all kinds of what? That's interesting. Oops, what's that? No, the phone. Duh. All right, let's see what we got. We got it? Now, so you can see it. All right. And then this is going to go right there. Can you guys see it too? There. All right.
Span of a few years. And the Depression wasn't just in America. Its impact spread across the world and ultimately led to the start of World War II. But what exactly caused the Depression? And what lessons can we learn from it? Let's start in 1918. World War I has just ended, and American soldiers are returning home having won the war. Ah, it feels good to be back. During the war, women had for the first time begun to enter the workforce.
Right.
And with men returning now, the economy saw a post-war boom. This economic boom, alongside a growing culture change, created the era known as the Roaring '20s.
Okay, you guys hear that? The money that they made off of the war. This is only war money that's caused this.
Party! At this time in Detroit, Michigan, a man named Henry Ford would revolutionize transportation with the Ford Model T car. Facing huge demand for the car, his company introduced the process of the moving assembly line. This mass production dropped the car's price from $780 in 1910 to $290 in 1924,
Wow.
making it the first inexpensive car for the masses. By 1927, the 15 millionth Model T would roll out of the factory.
Wow.
You get a car. You get a car. Everyone gets a car. Many companies would copy this assembly line process to mass produce other inventions, including the radio, washing machine, and vacuum. With mass production of new products and improved advertising using the radio, the age of consumerism had officially begun. You don't need a second job. You just need to learn how to talk to AI. Let's be real. Most people over 40 use ChatGPT like...
I don't believe in
Everyone
AI.
wanted the latest and greatest new product. To help with the demand, banks began giving out loans more freely to people so that they could buy these new products on credit with money they didn't yet have. Times were good. People were partying, there was jazz music, and a spirit of social liberation. Good to see you at the party, old sport. Prohibition had started in 1920, but meant little to this new generation. The parties were bigger, the morals were looser, and Wall Street became the place to be.
Wow.
From 1921 to 1929, the US stock market increased sixfold.
Let me reiterate here something that the Roaring Twenties were white people, and there was a lot of lower class white people that didn't get to do any of this. They didn't get to drink. They didn't get to dance and party. They were poor. They hardly was able to get any food. This is not all of the United States that was able to do this. And the black people obviously didn't get any of it.
Driven by the post-war boom,
Even though black people served in World War I.
easy credit, and all the demand for new consumer products. As the public learned about these incredible returns from the stock market, everyone began putting money in and talking about it more. This created a snowball effect, where as the stock market continued to go up, people began to blindly sink all their savings into stocks, and some even took out loans, which further drove prices up. When people believe no price is too high for a stock, that can be a warning sign that the price is no longer based on fundamentals and may have been driven up to irrational levels. Although stock prices were reaching new highs, something wasn't right. By the mid-1920s, the economy and demand for products had slowed drastically.
Okay, that right there was illegal. To be able to buy stocks on a loan. I don't know. I did. I bought Railbus. I owe Railbus on a credit card. I did buy it on a loan. It sounded like a good opportunity, but now I know that it really isn't, because when I take over, it's probably not going to happen.
With Europe still recovering from the aftermath of World War I, and few countries being able to afford the new consumer items, global trade was stalling. This didn't matter, as people were still overwhelmingly optimistic and expected the stock market would continue to see record yearly performances each year. Extreme greed and unrealistic fantasy filled the air. With margin, people could even buy stocks for only 40 to 10% of the actual stock price, and then pay off their loan when the stock sold for large profits. I would like to take out a loan. Sure, what for? A house, a business, a farm? To buy stocks. Fine by me, here you go. By 1929, 40% of US consumer debt was being used to purchase stocks. And in that same year, the US had just elected a new president, Herbert Hoover, who famously said, "We in America today are nearer to the final triumph over poverty than ever before in the history of any land. The poorhouse is vanishing from among us."
And we all know that was a lie.
To many people, a skyrocketing stock market was a sign of a healthy, booming economy. But things were about to take a dark turn. Catastrophe would hit. On October the 24th, 1929, a day that became known as Black Thursday, the stock market would see heavy liquidation, with a record 12.9 million shares sold, and the entire stock market fell 11%. This day marked the beginning of the Great Depression, and the following week there would be Black Tuesday, where the market fell 12%, with a record-breaking 16.4 million shares sold. Eventually, in the span of 2 weeks, stocks had lost about a third of their value. People who had borrowed money to invest were crushed, and many people lost their life savings. However, the worst was yet to come. The common belief is
they didn't even talk about what made the Great Depression happen. What happened to that? You have to tell what caused it. You can't just say the Great Depression happened.
That the stock market crash caused the Great Depression. But this is not entirely true.
Oh, okay.
The stock market triggered a recession, but the real cause of the Great Depression was that many banks had extended too many bad loans and were speculating too much. At this time, many US banks were small and independent shops that lent out a large amount of their assets to people for stock market speculation. As the stock market crashed, these banks went out of business overnight. There was no deposit insurance at the time, so if a local bank closed its doors, people lost their money.
Wow.
With headlines of many banks shutting down, people began to panic and pull their savings from healthy banks.
Yeah.
This created bank runs on
Right.
otherwise healthy banks that had to turn around and try to get all their customers' money all at once. This became a serious problem when in New York City, a false rumor started that the Bank of the United States refused to sell a man's stock. This was enough to cause over 25,000 people to crowd the bank, and by the end of the day...
Do you guys know who gave that? That was Morgan. Was a financier, Morgan. What's his first name? Morgan's his last name. Bank owner, something Morgan. He's the one that started that rumor that caused the run on the banks. He did it, Morgan.
$3 million had been withdrawn from the bank. Fear was in the air, and worried of a larger bank run they couldn't handle, the Bank of the United States closed its doors and asked the state to take over the bank's assets. Soon after, the bank failed to get support for a short-term loan to stop the bank run and would ultimately close its doors for good. It accounted for a third of the total $550 million deposits lost in the Depression. This sent shockwaves across the banking industry, and many banks began to call in loans and sell assets in order to stay liquid. 1/3 of banks in America would ultimately fail in this time period. Hey Joe, I just sold my car and have a few bucks now to pay you back. Which bank are you with again? Are you crazy? Not a chance I'm leaving my money in any of those banks again. With people choosing to hold their money outside of banks, the money supply in the US declined 31% from 1929 to 1933. And deflation has devastating effects on an economy.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari,
Wow.
the Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to you joining us at our next investor webinar, where you can drill deeper.
By causing the value of money to go up, it reduces consumers' willingness to spend money, discourages investment, and increases the burden for those in debt. All of this leads to wages and income falling. And through this all, the Federal Reserve stood back, allowing this money supply contraction and the banking failures to happen without any intervention.
Wow.
A crucial mistake that has been widely criticized for making the Depression much worse than it needed to be.
That's because the Federal Reserve is not the federal government. I don't even know why they call it the Federal Reserve. I guess other than that, it was created to print, make money, and loan it to the government. That doesn't make any sense at all, other than J.P. Morgan. That's who I'm talking about. J.P. Morgan and several others. Uh, they're involved in this whole thing. Oh, they went to Skull Island and drafted the um what, JP Morgan. Oh, drafted it to make the Federal Reserve Bank, and then they got, I believe it was McKinley, to sign it into office because they were doing favors for each other. And now the Federal Reserve stood around, didn't do anything because the federal government can't make them do anything.
Through all of this, US President Herbert Hoover had no idea how to fix this and would largely be blamed for the lasting duration of the Depression. Following the initial stock market crash, there was a growing sentiment for isolationist and protectionist policies. In 1930, he passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act to protect US farmers and other industries from foreign competitors. It increased tariffs on foreign imports to the US by about 20%, which then immediately led to 25 countries retaliating and putting their own tariffs on American goods. Global trade would plummet even further from this, declining 66% worldwide from 1929 to 1934. Global trade was a relatively small piece of the American economy at the time. It made things worse.
Right.
The Great Depression would last over 10 years and mark the worst economic downturn in the history of the modern world.
And what brought us out of the Great Depression? The Second World War.
Dow Jones would fall 90% from its high in 1929, and many lost their jobs as companies shut down en masse. 9 million savings accounts were wiped out. Over 9,000 US banks had failed. Industry halted, and unemployment in the US reached 24.9%, its highest point in history. To make matters worse, there was a period of severe dust storms in the middle of the US that caused a drought, high winds, and hurt many farms in what became known as the Dust Bowl. The worst.
They did that to themselves. Everybody knows that was not caused by environmental factors. That was caused by them tilling the soil and not doing regenerative gardening. That's what happened there. If you remove the native grasses, then the wind is allowed to blow. And then when they were planting crops, before the crops could come up, you're going to have a dust if it keeps getting dry and dry like that. Without all the grasses that was producing water vapor into the air, creating rain, well, there you have a problem. And that's what happened here.
Man-made ecological disaster in American history.
Man-made.
As farming in the US slowed down, and with 1/3 of Americans still in agriculture, this would have massive consequences. Homelessness and breadlines became a common sight. In America, there would be 34 million people without any income. Shantytowns began appearing across the country and got the nickname Hoovervilles after the now disgraced president. Could it get any worse? In 1932, the US elected President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who promised drastic changes and action to get the country out of the Depression. With the New Deal program, for helping the needy, he established a minimum wage, overtime pay, unemployment insurance, and a social security program. As for major banking reforms, he enacted federal deposit insurance on bank deposits to help prevent bank runs. And he also added the Securities and Exchange Commission for better reporting and scrutiny on public companies. FDR's New Deal programs helped to stabilize the banking industry and restore the public's confidence. However, it would still take several years for the US economy to fully bounce back. With other countries around...
That's where he got the Federal Reserve to print money. The government's not printing money. The Federal Reserve, which is owned by bankers, are printing money. That's crazy.
The world having also suffered from the Great Depression. This led to the rise of extremist governments, and World War II would begin just...
We created the Great Depression, and now you see what's happening around the world. This country has caused devastation all over the world.
A few years later, in 1939. It wasn't until the start of World War II in 1939 that the Great Depression truly ended. It was only at this time that the unemployment rate fell below 10%, and the US saw vast stimulus to support war efforts. Economists still argue how much intervention is needed to solve an economic disaster and the effect of the New Deal program. Many of the lessons learned from the Great Depression are still used in the modern day, including the need for a small, stable amount of inflation to boost consumer spending and business investment, an increased role in government spending, and the assistance from the government to boost the economy when a recession occurs. By learning from the past, we can better understand our current economic system and see any potential dangerous parallels in the future. In the end, it was greed that drove people to believe that there was no price too high for a stock and made many banks take on bad loans.
But it was them that caused the greed amongst people. They created it by living higher than other people, which caused people to be envious and jealous. And the only way that they could also have what the other people had who were rich was to invest in the stock market. The government allowed it to happen. The government allowed Wall Street and the banks to create this shit. How much longer are we going to let them do this to us? They're going to do it over and over and over until we all personally stop it together. We can and we will. How the USA colonized the USA. Almost 15 minutes. Well, I'm getting tired. And I need to take my medicine. It's 10:30. Yeah, I guess we might do the Great Depression. That was how the USA colonized the USA. What is it? Is it gonna matter? Let's see. The easiest microscope that I have ever used. Two.
This continent has some of the most dramatic landscapes on the planet, from the ocean shorelines to the alpine mountains and the sandy deserts. And also in this landmass from coast to coast and everywhere in between, there lived hundreds, if not thousands of different nations, tribes of people whose land this was. This was their home. But then others showed up to these shorelines in their boats. And that is when everything changed. In the spring of 1803, two American politicians visiting Paris closed the sweetest real estate deal they had ever seen. With the simple stroke of a pen, their country doubled in size, all for just $15 million. But in this deal, which was called the Louisiana Purchase, the U.S. didn't actually buy this land from France. France didn't actually own the land. What the United States was buying was the imperial rights to this huge swath of North America. This basically meant that France would stay out of the way and let the budding new empire, the United States, colonize it without interfering. If the United States really wanted ownership over this land, they would need to get it from the people who were here first, which at the time was lots of different native tribes. These are the people who had been here for thousands of years, way before Europeans had the idea of leaving their continent. And this land that the US just bought was theirs. Oh, and this isn't just me, like some modern enlightened person looking back and judging the United States at this time. The US knew that this wasn't their land and that they were going to have to buy it from the people living there. And their big plan was to do things differently, not like the old imperial powers that they had just broken away from. In fact, George Washington was, quote, determined that the US government's administration of Indian affairs shall be directed entirely by the great principles of justice and humanity. Go USA, let's do this in the right way. So instead of conquest, they would negotiate and sign formal treaties with these native nations. And they would pay them for their land, fair and square. After all, this was a country whose founding document highlights justice, tranquility, welfare, and liberty. In our series, How the U.S. Stole, we get to see how the U.S. grew from a group of English settlers to a global superpower. But none of those stories would exist without this one, the origin story, the first thing that the U.S. ever stole. So Europeans are pouring into this newly formed country, the United States. And the government is making deals and signing treaties with the tribes, allowing these newcomer immigrants to settle on their land. At first, this is a fairly peaceful transactional process. The U.S. would offer food, farming equipment, cash, the services of a blacksmith, all in exchange for ownership over this land. But unsurprisingly, a lot of these tribes had no interest in moving out of their ancestral lands in exchange for farming equipment. And this is where all of George Washington's ideals of justice and humanity really start to dissolve. The US was becoming a more powerful nation. They needed more land for their booming population. So the impatient settlers and their government started playing dirty.
The westward movement was like a great tidal wave.
You start to see what happens when these tribes say no to the newly powerful United States. In one instance, one group of tribes up near the Great Lakes didn't want to sell their land. They told the United States that this river would be the border and to not cross it, to stay off their land. The US said no, and they took them to war and lost twice. But on the third time, they won the battle and forced the tribes to sign a treaty giving away all of this land, basically all of present-day Ohio. Something very similar happened down here when the Seminole tribes refused to leave their land. The U.S. military came in, another war, killing thousands, forcing the tribes to sign a treaty and pushing them into the swampy interior of the state.
Wow.
Where they had no access to their farmland or the ocean. Down
Wow.
here in what was becoming Alabama, the Muskogee Nation refused to sign a relocation treaty, but not wanting to go to war, agreed to sell a portion of their land in return for a guarantee that they could keep the rest. And the United States agreed, and they actually did. And the Muskogee kept their ancestral lands forever. Womp womp. No, that didn't happen. 4 years later, a bunch of white settlers moved in, boxing the Muskogee out of their ancestral land. As tensions grew because of this violated agreement, the U.S. military was called in to force the Muskogee out of their lands. No treaty was ever signed.
Wow.
I mean, the shenanigans ranged the whole gamut here. They would get tribal leaders drunk to trick them into signing this paper that gave them all the land. They would appoint random people to be the tribal leaders and then tell them to sign away the land for the whole tribe. In another conflict, the Sioux and Arapaho nations defeated the U.S. military over and over until the U.S. finally signed a peace treaty acknowledging their land. And they were safe. Until gold was discovered 8 years later,
Right.
and the U.S. broke their treaty, redrew the boundaries, built roads on their land,
Yep.
and before you know it, you've got a bunch of white guys with gold pans harvesting this land. Treaties and justice be damned.
Right.
Eventually, other tribes caught on to what was going to happen, realizing that refusing the U.S. government would mean violence. So they would sign the paper, take the money, and leave. Over the course of almost 100 years, the United States signed 368 treaties with tribal nations, who were driven out one way or another to make way for white settlers, who established control over this land that their government had stolen for them. And yes, you have all the paperwork, all the spreadsheets that they were making, all the treaties, a nice paper trail. But this was all a facade of justice, a thinly veiled campaign for imperial conquest. Before we go on to the story, I just need to tell you that we don't have a sponsor for today's video. Lately, I've been hearing from some sponsors that my videos are too political, which is kind of a bummer because we work really hard to tell really cool stories. And if that means that people don't want to sponsor us, that's fine. Luckily, we have a Patreon where all of you can support this work. It's called The Newsroom. We call it The Newsroom because it just sounds cooler than Patreon. But it is a place where you can support what we are doing, which is something more and more we need. On The Newsroom, you get an extra video every month. It's a behind-the-scenes vlog from all of the people and processes and happenings around here in the studio. You get to see my scripts. You get royalty-free music from our composer, Tom Fox, that you can use in your videos. And live Q&As with me. Members of The Newsroom get to chat with me on a Q&A where they can ask me anything. But more importantly, you get the warm, fuzzy feeling of supporting independent journalism. And if that floats your boat, you can go to the link in my description, patreon.com/Johnny Harris. Let's get back to the story. Okay, so we have all of this fake treaty shenanigans going on to help the United States feel like they're doing justice. And it's working. They are moving loads of native people out of their ancestral lands so that white people can settle it. But there was one region that proved particularly difficult for this extermination project that was going down. Here in the Deep South, we had these 5 large nations that lived side by side with the settlers for a long time. They had all signed treaties with the United States that acknowledged their right to this land. Many of them spoke English, practiced farming, wore European clothes. Some even owned slaves. Because of this, these 5 tribes, the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Muskogee, and Seminole, were known as the 5 civilized tribes. And there's an alternative world where these tribes could have remained on their land, living side by side with the Europeans as they settled. But that's not what happened. mostly because of cotton. Farmers down here were getting super rich off of a very valuable cash crop called cotton that they could sell to textile mills around the world. It was an industry made even more profitable by its key input: free labor from stolen Africans. There was this one strip of land down here called the Black Belt Prairie that was particularly desirable for farming cotton. But as you can see, it was locked up in what the United States treaties had formally acknowledged as belonging to native nations. But the farmers down here were looking at this as like, this is a perfect place to expand our cotton kingdom. So these southern slave owners did what was kind of becoming U.S. policy towards the people living on the land that they wanted.
They've taken this video down 3 times because it teaches you how to hit lottery tickets every week. Watch now while it's still up before they take it.
They made up their own rules. The state of Georgia was particularly aggressive in trying to clear this land out, or in the words of their governor at the time, to replace, quote, all of the red with white population. They targeted the Cherokee Nation, passing a law that abolished their governments. The Cherokee are not going to stand for this, so they fight back using the same shenanigans that the United States is trying to use, the U.S. legal system. They take Georgia to court, a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And guess what? The Cherokee Nation won. Like, there was no way around the fact that they had ironclad rights to this land, signed and sealed. The highest court in the country just ruled that the states could not impose on tribal sovereignty. But, as we all learned in government class, a ruling from the judicial branch only works if the executive branch enforces it. Oh, and who was in charge of the executive branch? Oh, this guy. The guy who wrote a letter to his wife during the War of 1812 from the battlefield saying that he had successfully slaughtered 170 style. Oh, and the guy who's on our 20. Yeah, him. Andrew Jackson thought that negotiating treaties with the people who were living here was a ridiculous notion. So he looks at the Supreme Court ruling that validates the Cherokees' right to their land, and he literally responds in the snarkiest way possible, saying, "The Chief Justice, John Marshall, has, quote, made his decision. Now let him enforce it." No, he was not going to enforce it. Jackson had a different plan in mind. It came in the form of a new law that he pushed through both houses of Congress. His whole worldview towards First Americans embodied in a piece of American legislation, the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This law used taxpayer money to get tribes out of the United States and to relocate them to an uninhabitable place that surely no American settler will ever end up.
The Great Plains seemed an inhospitable land to people familiar with the eastern states and of Europe.
This became their dumping ground, and it came with a promise. Move here and we will never mess with you again. And what's crazy to me is that even after all of the shenanigans, all the facades, they continued to play this charade, saying that the nation of Indians may choose to exchange their land where they now reside. The law says that the government had to negotiate these treaties fairly, voluntarily, peacefully, and that the government would, quote, forever secure and guarantee them their new land, and that they wouldn't break any of the pre-existing agreements that they had made in previous treaties. But no, this was just more pretending, a paper trail of pretend humanity. Just as Andrew Jackson had ignored the Supreme Court ruling, he had no intention in following the law that he helped create. But he kept up the ruse. More documents, more signatures, more paper that made these civilized, justice-minded people feel like they weren't orchestrating a mass ethnic cleansing, sanctioned by the government, paid for by taxes, but they were. So this law is implemented, and the Cherokee eventually signed a treaty agreeing to sell their last portion of land, and they moved west, out to their little rectangle of land that had been allocated to them by the government on maps. The only problem was that the leader who signed the treaty on behalf of the Cherokee people was not actually the real leader. They had no authority to make this decision. The Cherokee chief furiously protested this, but the US didn't care. They had their signature from someone. In their eyes, all was justified. Between 1831 and 1838, nearly every member from the 5 tribes was expelled from their land. 100,000 people, whose home this was, now forced to walk by foot for more than 1,000 miles through brutal weather and terrain towards a little box on the map, a place they had never been before.
Horrible.
The Cherokee would eventually call this journey the Trail Where We Cried, or the Trail of Tears. Some tried to fight back against their oppressors, and others stood their ground until they were forcibly bound in chains by the U.S. government and herded west at gunpoint.
Wow.
Their land was vacant, and cotton farmers with their slaves moved in, and the economy grew.
That's what they've done.
How many lives were really destroyed? Some people say 3,000, other estimates say 15,000, but you don't need those numbers to see how destructive this was.
Yeah.
It was systematic, it was documented, and it was enshrined in law.
Wow.
We have a paper trail of all of it, showing the receipts, the payments, the treaties, the bureaucracy. It's like a bunch of spreadsheets from the 1800s. Americans said there's a reason why Hitler, 100 years later, references this process when he was carrying out his own ethnic cleansing.
Right.
He said that the Volga, which is a river in Russia, would be, quote, our Mississippi. He said that Europe, not America, would be the land of unlimited possibilities. The story of what happened to many nations of the first Americans doesn't end here. In fact, this is kind of the beginning. We're going to make a second part to this video, and in that part 2, I want to show you what happens next once these tribes arrive to their little rectangle on the map. Indian Territory, the place where these tribes were forced out, dumped, and left to build a new life. And how they once again tried to fight back using the legal frameworks that had pushed them out, and how all of that led to the establishment of one state in our country that could have looked a lot different.
Wow.
If you're still wondering how your competitors have grown so much faster, it's because their AI is working overtime. Hey, thanks for watching this video. I need to tell you about something. We have a poster. I finally have a poster. I've been dreaming about this poster for a very long time. All maps are wrong, and indeed they are. This poster shows dozens of map projections, all the weird, quirky shapes that you get when you try to map a sphere, which is what our globe is, onto a piece of paper, which is flat. It is available right now. You can go buy it, and doing so supports this channel, but it also gets you a really sweet poster. We printed it on really nice paper. I spent a very long time nudging every one of the...
he's doing good. I'm buying a map. I'm gonna buy a map when I can see it on. All right, y'all. Okay, you guys see how this has happened? Do you see how our country has become what it's become since the very beginning? It's been nothing but horror, nothing but murder and mayhem and torture and starvation. It's time to stop this. And we are going to stop this right now. We are. Choose me to be the new president and treasurer of all nonprofits, and I will show everybody how it's done. I'll talk to y'all later.